Again, welcome to Mountain Stream TV and News from the Roots. I'm Avram Friedman. Today is Friday, January 12, 2018. This morning I have with me Amanda Krause and Ellen Perry, who are with the ERA Alliance for North Carolina. That's the Equal Rights Amendment for North Carolina. They have been instrumental in, along with some students, some high school students.
From Asheville High.
From Asheville High, who have been organizing the Women's March, which is happening on January 20th. Amanda is with the PR team of the ERA Alliance for North Carolina, and Ellen is the District 11 Action Team Leader. Again, please forgive me; it's very embarrassing. but
No harm done.
Okay, so I'm going to start over again with what we were talking about. Last year, the Women's March in Asheville drew over 10,000 people. It was a magnificent march. I attended and filmed it in actuality. And if you're watching this, the scene behind us is actually footage from that from that march, and you'll see that it lasts over an hour. It was incredible. You know, police and organizers estimated that there were more than 10,000 people. I think there were more than that even viewing the footage. But at the same time, there was a national march going on that you attended, apparently.
We did. We were both in Washington, D.C. on January 21st of last year, and it was a once-in-a-lifetime kind of experience for me. It was just unbelievable. So we're happy to have had that experience, and then glad now to be able to participate in the local event on the 20th here. I was grateful to be there with my friends and my younger sister, and we had a speaker set up, and we were on the corner of Thomas Jefferson and Independence, and it was in like 9th Street, that little block on the National Mall, and we had our microphone set up, and Patricia Arquette even came and got on the mic, and I was there with the director and producer of the film Equal Means Equal, Kamala Lopez, and we were just calling out into action, playing music, singing chants, and orchestrating chants with the group who was just like in the street stuck there. It was kind of cool. I didn't actually get to march because I was just stationary because there were so many people, but we got to have our own kind of dance party with the people who were trying to move by, and that was really fun to be able to celebrate and feel empowered and feel the call to action, but also like sing songs and do things that were positive. And there's a lot of anger that is moving us, and I feel like we need to come together and love around this and learn from the anger of how we don't want to behave towards each other, but not necessarily the best way to communicate with those who don't understand what the Equal Rights Amendment is, or what so many things are that drive us to raise awareness about women's rights today.
Yeah. What is the status of the Equal Rights Amendment right now?
Well, it was drafted in 1923 by Alice Paul, who was a suffragist.
Really?
And so it's gone through a series of alterations and evolution, and we are still here in 2018 without a constitutional amendment that guarantees equal rights for women.
And protection under the law from discrimination.
Right.
And so I believe the Constitution outlines a process in which 38 states have to approve an amendment for it to become an amendment.
Yes.
And then Congress, of course, has to. Well, Congress has already ratified. Is that right?
No.
No.
Up until last year, there were 35 states, and then Nevada was the 36th state to pass the Equal Rights Amendment.
In March of last year.
Yes. March 20th, 21st area. And so that was awesome because it woke so many people up and saying, wow, if we just get 2 more states, then they can expunge the deadline. And there's case study that previous deadline was expunged for how much they pay congresspeople. And so because that deadline was expunged, then that gives room for us to say, well, the Equal Rights Amendment deadline is not totally,
which was 1982, right?
Yeah, which was 1982.
Right.
It's not valid.
So there's a precedent that we could
which is really important. I mean, For many years, for decades now, we've gone under the assumption that the Equal Rights Amendment essentially failed because it didn't meet that deadline.
Right.
And all those states that have already ratified the Equal Rights Amendment would have to do it over again if we were to pass. But that's just not the case, apparently. Now we just need two more states.
That's
It
right.
doesn't have to be the case.
It doesn't.
That's right.
It's
And
not
North Car-
necessarily the case.
There are two approaches: the threstate method, or just redoing it all
Start
over
over.
again. But that's much more of a hurdle.
Well, why would
definitely.
anybody
Take
want to do
longer.
that?
Well, that's a good question. Because we're so close.
Yeah.
North Carolina has not yet ratified, but that's what we're fighting for.
Yeah.
ERA-NC Alliance is part of the effort to have North Carolina be one of the final two states to
Yeah.
ratify. Virginia and Illinois are pretty
They're
close too.
They could vote this year.
Yeah.
Illinois could have already voted last fall.
Mhm.
And I'm still grappling with the idea that I want us to be able to do it this year, and there are other powers that be saying we need to wait till next year, and this year we just build up momentum. And I think it just takes educating people, and the more that we know about it, the more we talk about it, the more opportunities we have.
Have you done any lobbying of the state legislature and gotten a feel for how some of the leadership, the current leadership, feels about that? And is there any Republican support, essentially?
We have done some lobbying.
We
I
did
know
a
that
cookie drop, which is we made cookies and brought it to the different congressmen's
In
office.
Raleigh.
Yeah, in Raleigh, and that was kind of interesting to do because we were there and just raising awareness about it, but also giving them a snack.
Yeah.
And it seemed kind of fluffy in a way, but it was fun to be able to give them something that was a little different, I
Little
guess.
reminder.
Yeah, a little reminder.
So efforts like that, and also we work with Roberta Madden, who has been fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment for over 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
and Ann Von Brock, who is also part of the board, right? And Jimmy Cochran-Pratt, who's the District 10 leader. And we've been working with Marina Grohl and some of the people in Raleigh to sort of figure out who's on our side. I know that Carla Cunningham is one who is.
She's one of the people who presented the bill, and so is
She Republican?
McKissick.
Floyd McKissick.
Mhm.
Both Democrat, I think, right?
They're both Democrats.
Okay.
Yeah.
But was there any sense of some Republicans that were in support?
I get more of a response of, oh, I need to do more research on that. And it's
Right.
really? It's been a long time.
Yeah.
And there's only
Since
26
1923.
words that you need to
Yeah,
research.
I'm not sure women are really equal. Right? Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah.
Well, that's it, because if we were truly equal in the eyes of the law, it'd be no big deal to ratify.
Right.
But there's a holdup
without
there.
question.
Yeah.
I think a really good way to get people to see all of the evidence is to see the film Equal Means Equal, and we've been doing screenings of it, and it's in Spanish. You can share it with a wide range of people, and it's definitely a trigger warning type of film. It's a lot to digest. You could even do it in pieces and talk about it as a college course. It's so thorough and full of information that's overwhelming to the psyche, but it's definitely something that is well, there's the evidence, and now I'm either for or against after that, because you see so many calls to action, and to not come in support of the Equal Rights Amendment after watching that film is a true truth teller in a way. So
Because it gives examples about how having an ERA, having an amendment, would help protect women, particularly in the criminal justice system. In terms of the workplace, equal pay was a big issue. What is it, 79 cents to the dollar that women make?
it could be up to 49 cents to the dollar for Latino women.
That's right.
Depending on your race as well.
That's right.
So it's quite discouraging to see, and when you say that women don't have equal rights, it's more admitting that you've been so privileged that you haven't had to deal with this. But single mothers are the most affected, and they are supporting families, and it's really just ends up being a classist issue. And
There's
that's,
all of these real issues, economic issues, social issues, But then you go and talk to some of these ignorant legislators and others, and you'll get a line like, well, if we pass that, then men and women would be able to use the same bathroom.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they go to. You know?
Yeah, it is.
And
women in combat was
answer-
an issue in the 70s, right?
Oh, and one
Right.
of gay marriage
Gay
was
marriage.
an issue, and we have all those things
Yeah.
now, so it's really ridiculous. And,
is.
I mean, I could just say, in your house, in your family, do you use the same bathroom as the other person?
And in a lot of restaurants now that you
Yeah.
go, they have dual bathrooms.
That's right.
It's a direct response. I was at the Nutcracker 2 years ago at the beautiful Civil Center, which is the Verizon Center or whatever it's called, downtown.
US
the Cellular Center. And it's like full of people trying to go to the bathroom during intermission because no one gets up during the whole ballet. And it turns out men and women are going into the men's room, grandmothers and their grandchildren, and no one's getting,
Right.
any weird things happening. We're all just going to the bathroom so we can
Yeah.
get back and enjoy the show and a cultural experience.
I
And
think America
that's what pulls people
is
together.
an infant nation in
Yes.
that way, because I think in Europe that's been happening for a long time. That they men and women use the same. They don't even label them in some places.
It's kind of that American Puritanism, right?
well, I guess that's
Puritanical enough.
what the roots of it
Yeah,
are
yeah.
in some ways.
And in some ways, I think traditional religion plays a role in terms of my faith. Men and women do have different roles. There's not that equal balance. There's one that's a supporter role and one that's the leader.
Right.
So I think another argument against ERA is that it's not biblically ordained
Oh,
for,
yes.
for women and men to be equal.
Mm.
So that's something in the South particularly, I think, as we look at fundamentalist religion. That
Well, I think, probably more so in the South, but I think it's true in the North, it's true in the West, in the Midwest as well. I mean, there is a certain percentage of the population that views the world in that way. I mean, and that's why you have such puritanical government,
Yeah.
including, it's hard for me to describe Trump as puritanical, but he plays to that vote on
He sure does.
certain key issues,
Sure does.
Right.
and that's what gets him by.
He plays to the fear.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's the two sides. There's coming together in compassion and Christ consciousness, which is heart-based consciousness.
Right.
And that's what draws people together in love. And that's what brings people, I think, to ceremony and to celebrating life and honoring life and the sacredness of life. And then there's the fear of and judgment that rules people, but it just makes them, in a way, mad at themselves sometimes, I feel like. And that's a really sad thing. But I mean, aside from the bathroom part about the ERA, there's also, and gender pay gap, there's also human trafficking. Women are more likely to be trafficked, and young girls are more likely to be treated as adults and prostitutes rather than in cases of, say, they are being pimped out. They accept a transaction. Because they accepted a monetary transaction, they're considered adults. Whereas if I was a young woman who was taken advantage of by a man and there was no monetary transaction, then it would be a statutory rape case. But in this case, the perpetrator would go to a John school where he's like, don't do that again.
Don't do that again.
And the young woman, who could be 12 years old, is tried as an adult prostitute. And that just puts her in the funnel of being involved in the criminal injustice system.
Is that state law that you're talking about, or is that federal law?
Well, that could be fought up all the way to the level of the Supreme Court, and it depends on the state.
They fought up to the level of the Supreme
And
Court,
that's
but I mean the law that says that if you accept money in exchange for sex, basically, that is a federal or
I'm not sure.
state.
That's evidence that's in the Equal Means Equal film, and I'll have to get back to that
okay,
to see
yeah.
which state.
That's just good.
they
I had
adopted
never
it.
heard that before. That's
It's disparaging.
yeah. Well,
And
sure.
you
It's
just
worse
see-
than disparaging.
Yeah, it's worse than
Punishing the
that.
victim. in that sense.
Punishing
Yeah.
the victim, exactly. And these are young women,
girls.
and sometimes young men who are taken advantage of.
Mm.
It's more rare, but it still happens. And
I don't think it's that rare, really.
Mm.
Yeah.
I'm learning more about it, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's something that we just don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And the more we
Yeah.
talk about it, the more we can teach our children how to trust their families that they'll be protected. Because a lot of the time, they feel like they're saving their family from threat by doing the bidding of someone else. Because that person is threatening their life, their family. The evidence in the Equal Means Equal film is that a man has been watching a young woman for weeks, and he knows where she lives, he knows she's a cheerleader, he knows who her parents are, and he says he threatens the life of her family and says, if you don't come with me, I'm going to kill your family.
So is this available on the internet, on YouTube? Or
It's on iTunes and Amazon,
Okay.
and you can rent it for like $3 or purchase it for $12. So it's very affordable.
And what's the title again?
Equal Means Equal by Kamala Lopez.
Okay.
And we've had screenings in town. The last public one we did was at Asheville Pizza and Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a good turnout. We had 70 plus people to
Mhm.
attend that.
Yeah.
And it does open one's eyes when you see that film, to see
Mhm.
the realities, because we're in this kind of comfortable lull where we think, sure, women have equal rights under the law, but in fact the only constitutionally upheld right women have is the right to vote, the 19th Amendment.
Mm.
So even if we have what seem to be legal protections, those can be overturned, they can be adjusted, they can be treated case by case. So that's why we feel the need for the constitutional amendment to say that people can't be discriminated on based on sex.
There are conservatives who argue constitutionally that women are already covered under the 14th Amendment.
Right, that's right.
And in an ideal world, I think that would be true, because it does outline all the rights of persons under the law, of people, and but it does not specifically define a woman as a person.
As a person, right? That's the problem.
It defines slaves as people,
Right.
and it defines corporations as people.
Indeed. Women, I don't
Well,
know.
actually, the amendment doesn't cover corporations, but it's been interpreted to cover
Interpret, and that's the thing. It's how you interpret it, right?
Right.
So who was it? Judge Scalia said, and I think the Equal Means Equal covers this, doesn't it? That in fact the Constitution was not written with women in mind, and it doesn't. What does he say? It doesn't
prohibit discrimination.
Right. So he made the case for us that we don't have that protection.
Well, the Constitution doesn't even have all men in mind.
That's right.
It only has white landowning men in mind,
Indeed.
which was about 5% of the population at that time.
It is true.
But yeah.
Well, and I think what we're seeing now with the Me Too movement, hashtag Me Too, is really significant because it's created this new awareness. We were saying that there are things we just don't like to talk about, and that's been true, particularly the workplace harassment, sexual assault, that sort of thing. And so with Me Too, it's been a really it's been a great thing for us in the ERA activism world, because there are such close links between the two. You know, as people are saying, hey, me too, I've also experienced harassment and discrimination. And it's so widespread. People are talking about it more. And so our argument is that with ERA, with this amendment in place, there would be more protection for women who are coming out and sharing their stories. And there wouldn't be that fear surrounding it. Because I think that's been the problem, right? People are afraid. They're afraid they're not going to be believed.
Afraid of losing their jobs.
Afraid of losing their jobs.
That's what's
being called a troublemaker, and that kind of thing. So if they had the confidence of this amendment behind them, I think it would be. I think that would help.
The Me Too movement is, in my opinion, revolutionary.
Yeah.
I mean, those risks are still there for women who are coming out. I mean, yes, they can come out once and maybe not fear for their lives, but they are afraid of losing their jobs. And I'll bet you there are women who are losing their jobs because they're saying Me Too. What do you think has inspired this movement and given women the courage to come out at this time, despite the consequences that they face?
I think they've just had enough.
I think
Right.
the more
The
darkness that's exposed, and there's been a lot of ugly feelings that have come out after this presidency, and just, I think also just the power of people accessing the internet and raising their voice more and more, just like we are right now, and being able to communicate openly in open forum is definitely a big bolster. Because if you live in a rural community and you're the only one who has this view, then it's hard. Mm-hmm. But if you have support online and support all over the world, then you feel empowered. Mm-hmm. You feel the prayer of people saying that this is a pulse, this is a call to action, and we all need to move together. And it's definitely something that we need to hold on to, is this open forum.
Solidarity, I think, is what it is. Yeah.
What I'm sort of observing is that not only women, but black people, people of color, Hispanics, and lesbian, gay community, and others, there's a sense since the election of Trump that not only are we not only making progress, but that we're moving backwards. Mm-hmm. And I think that what I'm observing is that there's a reaction, a gut reaction to that. People are saying, no, mm-hmm. we're not going backwards, and that has sort of fueled a rage, mm-hmm. an inner rage in people, in all people that are affected, to where they're willing to stand up, risk jail even, to confront this movement. I mean, I see, it's a matter of individual rights, but it's also a matter of species survival, in terms of the climate, for instance, mm-hmm. Or going to war with Korea. People are feeling that we can't do this, and survive as a species.
Right.
And we have to stand up now or never.
Or else, yeah. That's right, now's the time.
It comes down to that totally. We were talking about this on the way here in the car, is that, if we don't have, this is the idea of a sustainable future, that we're trying to live in prosperity of just, protecting the water, protecting the soil from being poisoned so that we can continue to have healthy harvest. And if we don't have those key elements in place, then how are we to continue to survive as a species? And that is quickly ruined with nuclear war, with fracking, with people drilling under playgrounds, under homes. We're getting totally, it seems off topic, but this is totally relative to the whole fight for our lives and for our autonomy of our bodies. And when it comes down to it, it's the right of an adult to decide what they want to do with their bodies. And for a woman or a man to decide what their gender is, for us to be able to decide who is actually the more available parent. This isn't just about women getting the rights to be the mother. In the case of divorce, if the mother is more unstable than the father, the Equal Rights Amendment would make room for the father to be able to have custody. And so this is about us as a society coming together and knowing what is best for the future, which is our children, and protecting them from having to deal with all of the stuff that our past generations have had to grow with, and to heal from the scars of our ancestors that have caused atrocities on each other. And it's up to us to decide if we want to continue to live in those footsteps, or choose a new path, which is the path of peace and prosperity. And there is enough food for everyone. There is enough room for everyone. There isn't a reason to build up this idea of the evil other or the alien. We have so many laws in the United States that ripple out all over the world, and the Equal Rights Amendment is one of them, because of us not fully ratifying the ERA. The United Nations Bill of Rights for Women is not fully passed. And we're one of 7 countries in the UN that hasn't passed it, including Sudan,
That's right.
Iran, so I think Palau, it's like a Southeast Asian island. So that's just a handful of countries. The United States is one of them, and they're looking to us to see that we pass it. and that is what's going to continue to ripple out and help protect women from what is it called when you prevent sterilization and all sorts of forced sterilization and child brides, stuff like that we don't have to think about that much in the U.S. But these are really
global issues. We were talking about CEDAW coming over here.
That's the United Nations Bill of Rights for Women.
Right.
Is another name for CEDAW. CEDAW is the acronym.
That's interesting. I'm seeing this convergence of forces that's taking place now. Like a couple of 3 years ago, I went to this incredible climate march in New York City. I'm sure you remember it. There were 400,000 people there, and it was billed as a climate march, but represented there was every progressive issue on the planet. You know, there were labor and signs about living wage and there were women marching for the ERA and for for the women's movement in general. There were students. There was talk about voter suppression. All of these things were part of the climate march, and likewise, when I went to the women's march in Asheville last year, it was the same coalition, and it wasn't just about women's rights. It was about all of these other rights, which are completely tied in together. I mean, I think it's coming to that point where we're beginning to realize the ecology of issues that are converging, and it's the same forces that are on one side that are repressing all of these issues, and moving backwards on all of these issues, and it's the same people who are working, which I believe are a large majority of people in this country today, are understanding the necessity not only not to move backwards, but to move forward rapidly, and if we want to survive, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think it is. Well, and I think you're right about the interconnectedness. That people are starting to see the big picture. How it works as a whole, and that I think is going to take it a long way.
I really think it will, and I think it's important just to get back a little bit in the conversation about working towards passing this in the state legislature, that it's important to organize now.
So what we've done locally in the last year in Buncombe County, we had the Buncombe County commissioners sign a letter of support because they said they don't sign resolutions in support, but they signed a letter of support of the Equal Rights Amendment, and we had the Asheville City Council sign a resolution in support of passing the Equal Rights Amendment. And what we can do in other municipalities is the same thing. And we have an open source document. We're putting together a kit for it to be easier for district team leaders to point people in the right direction. I organized a petition and got thousands of signatures through Ellen, through other people going out and getting signatures, raising awareness about this. And it does take boots on the ground and actual people who have a second in the grocery line to just say to the cashier, this is what I'm doing in my life, and this is how it relates to you, and I care about you as my neighbor. And it's about breaking down those moments of, I'm a little scared to talk to somebody who I don't know, and just taking a second to say, like, I can be present and with you and express something that's really in my heart, and it does affect you whether you realize it or not.
But what's important also to understand about the political process in North Carolina and elsewhere is that, okay, so you have a group of extremists, backward-thinking people in charge right now who probably are not going to pass the ERA. But when that pendulum swings, and it may even in 2018 with redistricting and with the mood of the public right now, it's possible that we're going to have a entirely different political outlook in North Carolina next year. But because of the way the system is set up, citizens have a very short window of opportunity
Yeah.
to introduce legislation in the state, in the General Assembly. And so it's really important to get your ducks in a row among the people in the General Assembly who do support you now, so that when they gain power, you can act, you have everything set up for them to act.
Right.
You know, and if you, it's not, you know, I've confronted this issue on environmental issues and others. You know, oh, the mood's not right in the general. You're just wasting your time to organize for that. No, this is the time for you to organize and
It's always the time.
Yeah, and to get things ready so that when that pendulum swings, you're ready to move in. You know, and so I think you're doing exactly the right thing by organizing in that way.
I think our board members would agree with that too. Because Roberta Madden, our friend who's been fighting for the ERA for over 40 years now, and Ann Von Brock are all about that sense of urgency. You know, doing the work and then ready to move when it's time.
Yeah, and I think, you know, my I guess maybe naive, my naivety, but I really don't believe it's naivety. I think it's reality. Is that the silver lining of the Trump era is that we're all getting organized, and that it could bring on the greatest progressive wave that has ever hit this country in reaction to Trump and his you know, the people in Congress and state legislature that are trying to move us backwards.
There are so many more people paying attention and getting to know who their representatives are, and that's a really cool thing. I have a good friend who does projection art, and he projects onto the Trump building, he projects onto all sorts of buildings about the injustices that are occurring, and it's a beautiful way to shine light and raise awareness, but at the same time we have to project onto each other the things that we want to talk about in our day-to-day, and make room for what's important and let go of the monotony, because it is a quick-moving cycle of things that happen, and it's so easy to get distracted. But I think that you're right, that because we're seeing the shadow, more people are called to the light of the truth, and that is very powerful.
That is the silver lining,
And that's and it's been, you know, throughout history, or at least modern history, I've witnessed this. And I'm almost 68 years old, and I've been through several cycles in my lifetime of seeing of political activism, and unfortunately, what tends to happen is that when a Democrat or a progressive candidate gets elected president, the activists lose ranks, and everybody kind of gets lulled to sleep, thinking that things are going to get taken care of.
Yeah, right.
That's how I felt during the Obama administration, and then we're in a bunch of wars all of a sudden.
Right, but then Republicans get, you know, Nixon and Bush and Reagan and now Trump, you know. Suddenly everybody gets active and alarmed, as they should be, but I think the truth is that we should be alarmed regardless of who is in power.
Because it is going to swing.
Because it's only relative about, to me anyway, the people who tend to get elected in public office represent, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, to me it represents a very small part of the political spectrum.
And it's those people who are making weapons and then selling them to people who
most of them are answering to the same interests in one degree or another, you know, and maybe some are worse than others, but it's still representing a very small part of the political spectrum, and
like
their
Star
interests
Wars.
are not you. It's like there's a big party and we're all not invited, you know. But so I hope that will maybe be different after this administration, because we're coming so close to actual fascism in this country.
It's true, and I think it's been great to see so many women running for office and winning elections.
Yes,
because they've got their finger on that pulse that you're talking about, right? So to see more women leaders, I think is going to help us make that shift.
I agree,
Yeah.
and I hope that does happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think too, that's kind of big picture, national level. Globally, we're having a meeting on Thursday, January the 25th, at 5:30 p.m. at the Grail Movie House on French Broad Avenue, in order to discuss just this very stuff. Our angle is the Me Too movement and its connection to ERA and what we can do as a community to promote awareness and support each other. So we hope to have a lot of folks come out to that meeting. We've got 3 wonderful guest speakers. Maida Commerce, who is in Story Medicine Worldwide, I think is the name of her company. She's a writer and a poet in particular, I think. And she read one of her pieces at the Charlottesville rally downtown. That's where I met her. We've got Dr. Ann Pfeiffer, who is the Women's Studies Coordinator at Mars Hill University. So she'll be coming at Me Too from an academic background, talk a little bit about gender studies and women's, the history of the women's rights issue. And then finally, Senator Terry Van Dyne will be there to give us a bit of a sense from the legislative angle of where we stand. So we really hope people will come out and join us. Again, that's Thursday, January 25th, 5:30 at the Grail Movie House, where we can continue these conversations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so do you have a core of legislators that have promised at this point to introduce the ERA?
Cunningham and McKissick,
Yeah,
right?
Cunningham and McKissick have already introduced it.
Is one a senator? McKissick is a senator. Is Cunningham a member of the House, or is she a senator?
She's a member of the House.
Okay. I can probably give you a list of other progressive legislators that you might want to approach to add to that.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and of course our Terry Van Dyne is.
Oh yeah, she's wonderful, and Susan Fisher.
Yes.
As well, of course. Yeah.
Absolutely right. We're fortunate to have a lot of people behind us. I think, as Robbie Madden says, the worst problem is just ignorance, not knowing, right? Not knowing the realities and the history of where we've been and what we still don't have. So the more we can spread awareness of that and get people involved in the cause, and it can be fun, it can be creative. My friend and former student Erica Covey is organizing a sign poster making event sort of thing for the Women's March. So I think people are coming together to not get mired in kind of the horror of it all, because it is pretty horrible, but to create community and create and make and build and gather. And so I think some of the momentum maybe comes from that, the way that women in particular are leading the way to create opportunities to build something together. And it's not a competitive movement, which is really nice.
It shouldn't ever be, and it's nonpartisan as well.
It's nonpartisan.
This was originally a Republican issue.
That's true.
Well, that's interesting. You want to give us the history of that a little bit, or?
I'm not sure who originally or who was focused on it before, but it was definitely. I just know that it was a Republican issue in the 70s and the 80s.
Oh, okay.
Marjorie Spruill, who teaches in South Carolina, wrote an amazing book. I hope I get the title right. Divided We Stand, in which she covers that very issue of how it was. ERA was supported by Democrats and Republicans alike. Where it started to unravel was when Phyllis Schlafly came on the scene, who was a Republican and headed up the campaign called Stop ERA. She was worried about those issues that we've talked about with the bathrooms, with gay marriage, with abortion. She was very conservative when it came to women's roles.
And also keeping women in the household. But she was the one traveling with a briefcase.
She was a career woman.
Who was
Phyllis Schlafly. She was active in the 70s primarily and 80s, and was on a lot of the talk shows at the time as the anti-ERA voice. And that's where it started to shift, because she got a lot of churches on her side, women in church groups and Republican women's groups, by, I think, fear of saying, if we gain equal rights under the law, we might have to get out and get jobs. Oh no! What's that going to look like? Her idea was we're very privileged to be able to be stay-at-home wives and moms, and we don't want that to go away.
That should be a choice. Not everyone has that privilege.
Right.
And that's the baseline.
It's back to class.
Right. That's back to class and suppressing poor people.
But at that point, that's when support began to trail off, and we lost the ERA momentum. So we're hoping to create that community to combat those ideas.
Is she still around?
She passed on fairly recently. Within
Good.
the past.
Well,
Actually, you know what?
May she rest in peace. Hey.
Bless her heart. In
Yeah.
fact, she had said, a woman will be elected president over my dead body. And I believe it was during the campaign when Hillary Clinton was running. And so it got to be this joke of, well, Hillary's going to be president, so it's good that Phil Schlafly has gone on to her great reward.
Well,
But
maybe
she's
that's
still
a
with
sign of the times or something.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Yeah. It's interesting, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mentioned the South. The ER. If you look at a map of the unratified states, it's mostly the Southeast that's not ratified. We have also Arizona and Utah out west as unratified. But there's
Are there
big
any
swath of-
southern states that have ratified the ERA?
Let's see. Hold on.
Georgia? Or
No.
No.
Trying to think about-
Florida?
Maryland.
Yeah.
Maryland is as southern
That's it.
as it gets.
Yeah. Because
So-
even Virginia has it.
Florida has not.
No way.
No. Okay. Well, I mean,
So it's a cultural thing.
Florida
too.
is kind of a swing state in some ways. I mean, sometimes they can go progressive, sometimes they don't. And you know, Texas used to be.
Yeah.
You know, they elected a man named Yarborough, Ralph Yarborough, who was one of the most progressive members of the Senate for years and years. But you know, that changed.
Well, that's right.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Shifts
and
quickly.
we shouldn't give up on these areas. I mean, there's what just happened in Alabama.
Alabama, I was just about to
Yeah.
say, that's a terrific
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
And African American women were at the forefront of that movement.
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting and exciting development. I
And
think.
we all need to come together and make it happen.
Yeah.
And it takes us overstepping diversity of melanin, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that it's time for us to come together and link arms, regardless of past trauma and past scars. And this is a
let's
this is a
move
new
on.
time to breathe into the next moment and move on, move forward together.
Because we are sort of all traumatized by the past, and we get into our little tribes and we think we're safe here, and I don't know about those people, but if we could transcend that, I think that would be the final push we would need to make it happen.
Well, it's interesting, and you know, I work with the NAACP. I'm actually the first vice president of the Jackson County branch of the NAACP, and my cohort and my superior, the president of that branch is Enrique Gomez, who is the first Hispanic president of a branch of the NAACP anywhere.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
But he did this just when the Charlottesville event took place, and the issue of the monuments, the Confederate monuments, rose. He did this incredible presentation, which we put on YouTube, called "After Charlottesville," and in which he talked about reconciliation rather than retribution. You know, if our reaction is to condemn the Confederacy and condemn all people who are, well, racism absolutely should be condemned, but rather than seek retribution, he used the example of South Africa and what Mandela did when he came into power, rather than punish those who perpetuated apartheid. He brought the country together by recognizing the value of the past, in a sense, and the fact that you can't just make it go away. You know, you have to accommodate. These people are going to be living with us. You know, and there has to be a way that we can live together and recognize each other's value. And he taught in South Africa. What they did was they combined. They did away with the existing flag, which was a very stark, almost like a Confederate flag in some ways, you know. But and they combined some of the symbols in that flag with symbols that were on the African National Congress flag into one flag.
Wow.
And then there was, I don't know if you saw the movie about Mandela where he took a rugby team and beefed it up and made it into a symbol of national pride. It had previously been only a white sport. He integrated the sport and beefed it up with, they poured money into training and they won the world, cup in rugby, and it went a long way toward reunifying South Africa, and it could easily have fallen into civil war,
But they acknowledge the history of everything that happened,
right.
And that's something that I think we need to do more in the South and our textbooks,
right.
and
trying to erase
it's a very similar
the
situation
more
here
you
in the
sweep
South.
things under the rug, the more taboo it becomes, and then there's a lot of pain around the fact that we're not honoring the past, and it's
Right.
definitely honoring the past. What that means is acknowledging what happened for what it was, and not just saying one side of the perspective. And so it's going to take getting those stories and also putting stories in of inspirers and activists and movement shakers, people who shook it up and made stuff happen. And our friend Ellie Richard just did this awesome exhibit of Americans Who Tell the Truth at the YMI.
Yes, I remember that.
And those stories were so empowering and moved me to tears. And if we were able to get more of those stories into the hearts and minds of young people, then they would feel called. They would feel like they weren't, like that
feel
saying.
disconnected otherwise, I think.
Yeah, but you can stand on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
You stand on the shoulders of your ancestors and all the people who came before you and paved the way. You're not waiting to move on to heaven where we're all going to be in peace then. We should make heaven now. We should live in peace and harmony to the best of our ability now. This is the reason this moment is called the present is because it's a gift, and it's our opportunity to take it and do what we can with it, and that's our power.
Well, and you said young people. I think that's going to be the key. The Women's March of Asheville organizer is an Asheville High student, Sawyer Taylor Brown.
And her and 4 other young ladies. One of them, Aiden Justice, and I haven't gotten to know the other women yet, but I'm really excited to know these young
That's
ladies.
wonderful.
Yeah, they're doing a great job. We're really proud of them, and I think that's where it's gonna flip. Is with our younger generation,
I
millennials.
totally agree with you,
Yeah.
and I'm seeing it happening even here in Cullowhee. Western Carolina University is notoriously inactive politically, historically, that the students have been completely uninvolved, and it's very generally considered one of the more conservative schools in the state. Suddenly they have an active branch of Black Lives Matter.
Oh, wow.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And the NAACP has made inroads in there, and there are students that got involved in the Bernie Sanders campaign, and I see such hope, and the same in Alabama in the election. I mean, overwhelmingly, something like 80% of the people of 45 years and younger voted against Roy Moore.
Yeah, it's not have a pedophile representing us.
yeah. That doesn't take too much thought,
That's
but apparently it does
Apparently
for
it does.
48% of the voters in Alabama.
Still a lot of people.
Yeah, but that's going to grow less every day. The younger generation is growing older, and the older generation is dying out.
I know, that's right.
And so that gives me great hope for the future, because I see not only that there's more younger people and less older people, but that they are becoming, the younger generation is becoming more active and aware. And there's and I've always felt it was incorrect to say that the younger generation is apathetic. I never felt that they were apathetic. I thought that there was a sense of hopelessness and powerlessness.
And why bother?
And just a sense that they couldn't, because they're being fed that message from the news media every day that they're powerless. But I think that's being overcome right now, and it's kind of a snowball thing going on now. More and more people getting active. They're seeing results, and that breeds more activism. And I'm hoping and observing that is occurring. You know?
That's a good thing.
This discouraging of young people, I definitely felt as a young person, but also it empowered me to rise up and say, I don't want to be discouraged, I want to express myself, and led me to be the secretary of my high school, which was awesome opportunity to connect with people and learn that this is about how you have relationship with others and communicating and being the voice of others. It's not about your own power in terms of popularity. It's about how you can help bring your school together or your community together. And it's really cool that these young ladies are doing it at such a big scale as the Women's March is taking place.
Well, and another high school student, I think from North Buncombe High, organized the March for Science.
Yes, at the Odyssey School.
Yeah. I mean, it's...
What's his name?
A young man, high school age, organized the March for Science this past
Oh, yes.
year.
I
So
wasn't
we're
able to
seeing
make that.
both young men and young women taking the lead, which is an inspiring thing.
So beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was focused on climate? I mean, was
Well,
that...
there were two. There was the Climate March and the March for Science. The Science one was the first week, and then the Climate followed. But I remember hearing from that young man and thought, it gives us hope to see.
So the focus of that march was to essentially answer those who apparently have become anti-science.
Yes.
In government.
Anti-fact and
yeah.
reason and logic and explanation.
Right.
They're just going with their belief, but you
Yeah.
have to pay attention to the third, fourth, and fifth letters of belief. L-I-E.
I was trying to work that out in my head.
I had to write it down. I was like,
Well, and I teach college students, and I love them so much because, as you say, they give me hope. And I have a special core group of women in my UNCA humanities class from years past who are working now and getting involved in getting the word out about ERA to their classmates and colleagues, and several of them are going to be coming to our January 25th meeting to help out, so it gives us a lot of
What do you
hope.
teach?
I teach literature and humanities.
Okay.
Yeah.
At UNCA?
At UNCA and AB Tech, full-time at AB Tech,
Ah.
part-time at UNCA.
Okay.
So it's inspiring to go to work every day and see how thoughtful these folks are. And I teach all ages, at the 18 to 22 crowd, as well as non-traditionally aged folks going back to school, and we need everybody to be on board with just asking those difficult questions, which we do in the humanities, which is, what is this all about? What is the human experience concerned with? What's our commonality as humans? And then we read literature to find out more about that. So it's a treat every day to get to interact with these young folks and see where they take this.
That's wonderful. You're at the heart of the issue, I think, when you're dealing with young people.
It's
right
true,
now.
yeah. And we feel like we want to advocate for them as well, because it's their future that's, it's up for grabs at this point.
Absolutely.
It's at
Yeah.
stake.
That's right. Okay, so what can people do to help promote your work with the ERA and the Women's March?
They can check out the Equal Rights Amendment Alliance. We have a website, and we also have, so that's of North Carolina, Equal Rights Amendment Alliance of North Carolina, and you can check us out online on Facebook, and we have a regular website. They can become members of that. They can check out Ratify ERANC, which is more local to Western North Carolina. They can follow the Women's March. They can
Equalmeansequal.org.
check out equalmeansequal.org as well.
Say that again, please.
Equalmeansequal.org.
Equalmeansequal.org. Okay.
And then you can scroll down and it says, what's going on in my state, something like that. It's a drop-down box. And you can get updates about North Carolina and be added to the mailing list for action steps and that sort of thing. The most urgent opportunity we have is the Thursday, January 25th meeting, if people want to come out to that. We're going to have some action steps and do some planning for the year at that meeting.
Okay.
And that's at the Grail Movie House at 5:30.
5:30 on Thursday, January 25th.
Yep. And aside from that, join an action team. If you don't have an action team where you live, please reach out to us and we'll help you figure out how to get more involved and get inspiration around it, and give tips on how to get community members more involved, and raising awareness about getting your local municipalities to sign resolutions in support of passing the Equal Rights Amendment. And we're in a legislative state. We're not an initiative state, so we need to have everybody in our community supporting the people who represent us and communicating that through the legislature, as well as taking trips to Raleigh and doing that ourselves, and taking those trips to your local representative's office and having a moment, sitting down with their staffer, talking to them, having a conversation, showing your face, calling their office, writing a real handwritten letter, write op-eds.
Postcard. Yeah, write letters to the editor. It's a good way to get
of different news outlets. Just write a piece in your local paper, write a piece to your local high school if you're in high school. Talk about this. Start conversations every day.
Audre Lorde wrote, "Your silence will not protect you." Often
well put.
yeah. Often we talk to folks who say, "Well, I don't know, I just don't want to get involved. This just seems like it's too much. I'm a little scared about it." But your silence won't protect you, right? It's not going to work. You're just going to kind of implode into acceptance of this system that isn't working anymore, right? So to speak out at some level, whether it's just to talk to your neighbor or your classmate or something, little things matter. Just don't be silent.
Do you have a connection with the HKONJ March or the Moral March on Raleigh? That takes place actually February 10th this year. And I know there have been different Moral Monday demonstrations that focus on women's issues.
Yeah, we're connected with Leslie Boyd. She has been an active member of our group. She's been on a panel. She served on a panel of Equal Means Equal last year. So she's our liaison to that. I know she's been real active there and working with Reverend Barber.
Yes. Yeah.
So we support them for sure.
Great, but it seems like that would be a good venue this year's Moral March on Raleigh on February 10th for to bring up this issue, and carrying signs, and again combine forces. I know that there will be a presence of women and people working on that issue at that event as well. And last year we had over 100,000 people.
Yeah, it's a credible group. They've got credibility. They've got authority.
Yes. And the coalition, again, it's the same coalition. Maybe a different emphasis, but the same coalition of people that went to the climate march and the women's march last year are showing up in the Moral Monday movement marches, and that's a very powerful movement. Of course, Reverend Barber is a powerful speaker, reminiscent of Martin Luther King Jr. in some ways.
Well, and Leslie's done a good job of connecting women's rights to healthcare, because that's her passion, the healthcare cause. And so we had a rally downtown this summer in support of keeping the ACA, Affordable Care Act, because that matters for women, right? It matters for everybody, but women in particular have healthcare needs that have to be respected, whether reproductive health or whatever. So we appreciate what Leslie's doing for that.
Yeah.
And it just makes me think even more so about how we just pay into this insurance that we're going to get something later that will heal our issue, and that's just tertiary. We have to do preventative maintenance on our lives and on our health, and make sure that we're able to have access to things that are going to help us in the forefront, which is the same thing about passing the Equal Rights Amendment. You don't want to wait till shit hits the fan. You want to get there and say, no, I want to be protected before something goes wrong, because once something's already going wrong, then you're caught up. And it's really, it's a lot harder to deal with the problem. So we're working at this to prevent people from having to deal with the atrocities that have happened in the past. And you have to think about that in every aspect of your life.
I think that's why The Handmaid's Tale was such a hit this year. Margaret Atwood's novel made into the series, because it's the what if. What if we are silent? What if we just let things happen? It could be, right?
Yeah, well, it's not that far.
That's right.
From reality.
So
I mean,
then you're stuck. What do you do at this point? But now there's something we can do.
Right. You can always do something. If you see injustice, call it out. If you feel like you're threatened, find someone who can help you. Be your advocate. There's so many people who want to help, and it's about finding those advocates. And whether it's Pisco Legal or Our Voice or any rape crisis hotline number, if you're a sufferer of domestic violence, if you feel like there's something that is threatening your life, then you have the right to speak up. Or if you see somebody else who, you see a woman who has bruises on her face in the grocery store, I go up to people and I'll say, hey, how are you? And just start a conversation. I don't have to say, like, there's something going on with you and it's freaking me out, but it's called a carefrontation. You just go up to your friend, I care about you, I want to connect with you. And you can talk about whatever event's going on and say, like, this event's going on, I'd like to invite you to it. It doesn't have to be directly about the thing that made you talk to them, but taking those opportunities when you see them to just say something.
It takes courage, but it's going to take courage to overcome the bullies that are in power right now, and also just the tradition of oppression that has always existed, not only in this country, in every country, in every society, but it's going to take courage, and people are beginning to show that courage, and that's very encouraging.
It is. It's hard to do. It's not easy to take that first step.
It's not, no matter what cause you're working for, but for I think for women in particular, it's been very difficult because there's this religious, cult almost of defining the role of men and women that has to be overcome. That's a tradition that's lived for thousands and thousands of years.
It's a patriarchal system,
the patriarchal
Women shouldn't
system.
speak up. They don't have a voice.
Right. And, there may have been a time in history when there were reasons for men and women to have different roles like that, but that's gone. That,
we don't have to perpetuate.
Yeah, there's no sense.
That system,
it's counterproductive in every way. I mean, to try to perpetuate a system like that, we all have to be pulling together, and we have to recognize the rights of women and all oppressed minorities in order to survive as a human race.
It has come down to that, I think. We're at a turning point.
And it's beautiful. We're acknowledging the value of everyone because they're born. Their life is valuable. And that's it. That's all that matters. You're born, you're brought into this existence with us.
Right.
On this planet. You're valuable. That's the bottom line. And that should spill over into everything that's alive and sustains life. And that's the fundamental thing, is are we trying to perpetuate life and health? And
or not.
We're not.
Or not.
We're either for
right.
For cohesive support in existence or not. And thinking that someone is against you and that you're going to blow them up with a nuke or destroy them is just petty, and that's how young people behave who have not been taught to communicate and work through problems.
Empathize as well, to have empathy.
Yeah.
Respect life.
So once again, as we come to a close here, where do people meet for the Women's March? On the
Saturday, January the 20th at 11 a.m. at
the Memorial Park
by McCormick Field.
Which is down Biltmore Avenue in Asheville, North Carolina.
Just a few blocks down.
Just a few blocks down.
And we'll be walking right back up Biltmore to the Vance Monument, so you can meet us there if you're running late, or tag up with us during the march.
It's a sidewalk march, right? So we'll be going up the sidewalk. Should be a good crowd there. And then the Thursday, January 25th, meeting 5:30 at the Ground Movie House for some action steps about where we can take this in 2018.
Well, Ellen Perry and Amanda Krause, thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us this morning and for making the trip. And we most appreciate it.
We enjoyed it. Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Yeah, thanks.